What's up, Dodger fans? Welcome back to another episode of Talkin Blue. I'm Cody Snavely here with my co-host Vince Samperio, and we've got a packed episode today. 2 weeks hiatus. That's what happens on here. DodgerFest just wrapped up, giving us our first real look at the vibes heading into the upcoming 2026 season. Over in the WBC world, Edwin Díaz is the latest Dodger to officially commit to Team Puerto Rico, while the ongoing insurance drama continues to hang over the entire tournament, which seems to be getting wrapped up today. And back on the roster front, the Dodgers made a couple of moves. Andy Ibanez is out. Mike Ciani is back because apparently deja vu is a part of the plan right now. But before we dive into that, quick reminder for full Dodgers coverage, analysis, and breaking updates all season long, head over to DodgersBeat.com, your home for everything with the Dodgers. Vince, it has been a while. We've had a lot of stuff happen. I've still been snowed in here. None of that stuff has melted here on the East Coast with our frigid temperatures. You just got back from vacation in the warm, sunny Mexico. So how you doing, and how have you taken in all the Dodgers news and baseball news lately?
Yeah, I got back from sunny Mexico and get to 85-degree LA. So I don't know what the groundhog saw because winter hasn't even started in LA yet, and he said 6 more weeks of it. So, but yeah, I mean, in the baseball world, uh, been slow, and then it picked up a little bit just because pitchers and catchers report very very soon, and baseball will pick up very very soon, and Dodger Fest went happened. The first one I hadn't been to in a while. It seemed, although I was occupied, it just seemed like there maybe wasn't as many people as there this year. I know they had a little bit different format, but we did get some good gems from the guys talking to media for the first time. So that's always the thing that really matters.
Yeah, and then before we get into that with everything we're going to dive into, a quick reminder if anyone's joining us live and wants to jump to the front of the line for questions, comments, or whatever, super chats, that's the best way to help out the channel and help us continue to grow. So, me, Vince, and everybody here at the Bleed Lows Podcast Network would really appreciate that. But yeah, let's get right into it with Fan Fest, what was retitled to Dodger Fest a couple years ago. That took place over this past weekend, and I think it's a good time, even though a lot of the festivities and just even getting in, parking, all that stuff, it used to be a free affair, but now obviously when the Dodgers are spending 300 plus $1 million year in and year out on their payroll, they got to find some way to pay the books on this one. So obviously you got to pay to enter and get in now, but it's still a good experience from what I've seen for anybody that is in the LA area that is a super hardcore fan of the team. You can get signings, close meet and greets, but for the media side of things, I know Roger and our other correspondent for the page, Anthony, they were both there, getting the interviews, getting the photos, getting all that stuff done. All of those interviews are on our YouTube channel as well. But there's a couple interesting things from there besides the Miguel Rojas thing, which we'll definitely get into about the WBC. Were there any takeaways from the event? What are you is Dodger Fest like the start of the 2026 season for you as it is many other fans, or is it just another Saturday?
No, I think it's definitely kickoff to leading into the season. Years past, there's been weekends where it's been Dodger Fest and a Mookie event for his charity, and then Chris Taylor's Polar Plunge, which still ended up happening this year, even though he's not a member of the Dodgers. There's been weekends where it's been like 3 events and Dodger Fest, and then a week or two later they start reporting to Camelback Ranch, and it feels like baseball season again, and that's where we're at now. And yeah, I mean, there was a lot that was said, about individual guys, every guy, best shape of their life or what they worked on and everything else. But, what we really want to get down to is the nitty gritty. And Dave Roberts talked about the lineup a little bit and mentioned that Kyle Tucker would hit in the top third of the lineup, which basically means he's batting second or third, since Ohtani's going to lead off. He like Will Smith in the 5 spot, which probably puts Freddie in the 4 spot and Mookie in 2 or 3, which is, interesting enough because of where they're at, but also makes sense. And now the guy that's been your number 4 hitter and been, one of the best clutch hitters in baseball for recent years is now your number 5 hitter and Will Smith. And then you're looking at the bottom of the lineup that still has Teoscar Hernandez, Max Muncy, etc. Like it gets you excited again. Like, oh yeah, this Dodger team is going to be pretty good.
Yeah, they're good every year, and this year it's even more exciting. Speaking of that debate, kind of, I wrote about that on DodgersBeat.com as well. Put a poll up on X as well, kind of saying who do you want to bat in that number two spot. You can make an argument for and against for both guys, and Kyle Tucker has a better track record of the last 2 years, but Mookie Betts is Mookie Betts, and he's been in that either leadoff or the two hole pretty much since he's been a Dodger, and he's excelled really well there, except for this past season, which pretty much everything offensively was down. So that'll be something interesting to watch. That's why I'm interested in spring training this year more than years past, is because the Dodgers and Dave Roberts has so many toys to play with, and he's got to find a way to get these guys to gel and give them the best opportunity to win. But other than that, we also got a lot of Shohei Ohtani updates, him not pitching in the World Baseball Classic, kind of his decision, but also kind of not his decision because Evan Drellich and Ken Rosenthal said, due to the insurance issues, that probably wasn't going to cover him as a pitcher. So, they didn't want, anything to happen on that front. And then we kind of got some more confirmation about the way this roster is lining up. And the other thing that's, kind of on the political side of things, Dave Roberts has kind of been his comments about, the potential visit to the White House. That's been out there. We've wrote about that on the website as well. So a lot of information to come from FanFest that we've definitely covered on the YouTube channel and the website. So if anyone's looking for more stuff from that wise for the content, be sure to check that out as well. But there's really not much else to dive in for FanFest. It is, in my opinion, the first day of the new season. Every player comes in if they haven't already been training in Arizona or California or at Dodger Stadium. They're finally going to there now, and then a lot of these guys are in Arizona from videos what I've seen over the last 2 days. So they're getting ready for that three-peat. That's been the over kind of been the narrative for them, and it's kind of a good thing to see the amount of success that they've had, and they still continue to come earlier than what they're supposed to. They're continuing to grind the everyday baseball life. And I truly do, every team is going to say they want to win every year, but I think this Dodgers team, especially, a couple of them have a lot to prove, and a couple of them want to actually build a legacy.
Yeah, it's a different mentality. After you win the first one, then you win the second one. And, we've seen people say the World Series hangover and blah, 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 and everything else. And, maybe even the Dodgers got it in 2018 after such an emotional, World Series, going to game seven, losing the game seven, coming back. It was kind of a weird year, 2018. Made it back to the World Series, ended up losing, and, whatever. But it comes down to like this team. Yeah, they're bringing you guys every year that have that chip on their shoulder that they haven't won before. Blake Snell last year, Ohtani the year before. We got Edwin Díaz this year, so like they're always bringing those type of guys in that have that. And honestly, I think these guys really do care about legacy in the way of a three-peat doesn't happen very often at all, and doesn't happen very often at all in this new age of baseball where the playoffs have expanded. And there's a very good chance that they can go out and do it. Guys like Freddie Freeman, Mookie Betts, just strengthening their Hall of Fame resumes if they're not already both guaranteed to get in. There's other guys that want to contribute. Some of the younger guys that maybe were hurt last year, a River Ryan, Kyle Hurt, like guys that weren't around that want to contribute in their own way. So like there's a lot here. The guys are locked in, Dave Roberts, and then it seems like it's one of those where if the boss, like there's an episode of The Office where like Michael's not there and the work just gets done. I think that's kind of where this Dodgers team is at. Like, I don't think Dave Roberts and anyone else is telling all these guys to get there early. I think they're genuinely getting there early because they want to get the work done.
Yeah. So spring training's just around the corner. Obviously, the big sports world thing right now is Super Bowl Sunday coming up between the Patriots and the Seahawks. Immediately after Thursday, that's when the Dodgers pitching and catchers are officially supposed to report. I think the following Monday, they are supposed to position players, and then anybody participating in the World Baseball Classic, they're all supposed to report within the next couple of days as well. So, just like that, this offseason is pretty much wrapping up. There's still a lot of key free agents out there, one in Kike Hernandez, who we'll definitely touch on later today, possibly. But kind of getting back to the World Baseball Classic and some Dodger news, Edwin Díaz, he is the latest player to commit to the World Baseball Classic, representing Puerto Rico, where he's from. He played there famously in, I think this is his third time in the tournament, third or fourth time. Obviously, last time was made famous because after beating the Dominican Republic, celebrating on the mound, he ended up getting injured, had to get surgery. I believe it was on his calf, something along those lines, ankle. Ended up missing the entire season. And that's kind of probably what's jettisoned these insurance talks, just because the teams don't want that to happen to their star players, especially a team like the Dodgers, who just inked him to a 3-year, record breaking contract. So they want him to be their closer from start to finish and throughout October and be healthy. Your face value of Diaz playing for Puerto Rico, especially a team that's kind of been surrounded by a lot of insurance issues over the last week.
Yeah, I mean that's a different topic we'll get into right now. But Diaz specifically, I mean, he got hurt, like you said, celebrating, kind of a freak thing. I'm sure he's not gonna celebrate this time like that, or a nice handshake or whatever it is. But these guys, and this will kind of lead into the conversation, but like these guys care about this World Baseball Classic. It kind of started as a fun exhibition that MLB and the powers that be kind of created. And the first year there was a super old Jeter and a super old Ken Griffey, and like guys that the USA didn't seem to take it very serious, but the other countries did, and that's continued to build. Now the USA is taking it seriously, and they won it one time, lost in the finals. Now they got probably their best team they've ever had here. So it's good to see. I love the World Baseball Classic. I like watching it. Obviously, I may have different feelings had Edwin Díaz been the Dodgers closer in 2023 and he got hurt and he was out for the year. But that's just the matter of it. I saw the best case I've seen for if you're worried about a guy getting hurt or whatever, and because Altuve got hurt last time too, and I think he was tonight this time, is the one I saw. I forget who it was, but basically saying like you're playing real competition, you're facing real competition. That's a good thing. If you're in spring training, sometimes you get to your second or third at bat and you're facing a guy that's never pitched in the majors, never even pitched, above Double A or something like that. Some guy wearing number 88, and those guys can maybe not always be the most accurate, and sometimes you might get hurt that way. So we saw Gavin Lux get hurt in spring training running the bases. So
Yeah.
I'm not really worried about that. Edwin Diaz. I'm sure he has, a little bit of redemption on his mind, and especially being one of the few that end up getting cleared for Puerto Rico, that certainly makes him, a little bit more likely to be fired up for it.
Yes, freak injuries happen in spring training. You bring up a great point in terms of like when you get later in the games, especially early on in spring training when they haven't made roster cuts yet. One that jumps to me right off the bat is 2018. Justin Turner broke his wrist and he was out for the first like 2 months of that season. In 2018, we all remember the roller coaster regular season that team went on, hot and cold streaks. They got off to a very slow start at the beginning of that year, and that's because they didn't have him there. Injuries can happen anywhere, and the World Baseball Classic, when you're playing at 100%, 110% for some players so early in the season, could be an issue. I think for the Dodgers players specifically, I don't think they ever really drop a baseball or a bat or their glove. Seems like they're playing pretty much baseball all year round. So that's a good thing for them. Their bodies should be fresh and ready to take on this tournament. And for a team like Diaz, realistically, does anyone expect Puerto Rico to get out of pool play at this point with the players that they have? So we're talking about Diaz getting maybe one or two appearances in the first round of the WBC, and if they end up getting kicked out in the first round, then guess what? He's going back to Dodger camp and he's getting ready for the regular season there. So it is cool to have a couple Dodger players representing. I believe he is the fifth. Ohtani and Yamamoto obviously representing Team Japan. Will Smith back when Team USA, and then Hae-Sung Kim is playing for Korea. So they had a couple of guys that were interested as well, potentially joining. Freddie Freeman's famously, rep Team Canada. He backed out for personal reasons. Teoscar Hernandez, shared some interest in playing for the DR. Ended up not, working out. Wanted to focus on the Dodgers. I think Andy Ibanez is also playing, or he declined paying for Team Cuba, but he's in Dodger limbo right now and DFA limbo. So we'll see if anybody else comes out off this roster. I think they're supposed to be officially announced, I think that like sometime this upcoming week. So we'll see how that works out, especially for Team Puerto Rico, who's kind of been hit with the insurance bug. But it's a good segue to the next part here, and that's kind of tying into Miguel Rojas's role in it as well. The insurance issues for the WBC. It's kind of been a thing that's we as Dodger fans have experienced, because I remember Kershaw was supposed to play in the 2023 WBC. He was one of the first players announced to join that starting rotation. It was one of the things that he wanted to check off his bucket list of his career. Ended up not working out right before the 2023 season. Insurance couldn't cover him. And we remember how injury plagued Kershaw was at the tail end of his career. The body was just starting to wear out. And the Dodgers, wanted to make sure that if he ended up getting hurt for whatever reason, his decent chunk of salary, even at his age, was covered, and they ended up couldn't getting that done. Um, Now we're seeing a lot of players, especially Latin players, which is a little odd, kind of have some issues here. Francisco Lindor is probably the biggest one. A lot of the guys on the Houston Astros, whether it's Carlos Correa, Jose Altuve, they weren't approved as well. And then Miguel Rojas, he's been pretty healthy since he's had a Dodger uniform on. He may have an ageist lawsuit on his hands because 37 years old was the cutoff, I guess, for insured players. So his $5.5 million salary wouldn't be covered if he got injured. So that's the reason why he's not playing for Venezuela in his final year. So what do you make of all this? Do you think it's an issue? It's for Major League Baseball, the Players Association, like kind of just seems like when the WBC and baseball is getting some steam, they always find a way to kick themselves in the ass or something.
Yeah, that's how it feels right here because coming off the 2023 World Baseball Classic, you get all these good games, you get the good matchups, and then you end with Ohtani versus Trout. Like you couldn't have wrote it better. And then now, we have that momentum. We're leaning into it now. They're trying to, see what's going to happen with the Olympics in LA in 2028. And then now you have like this where it's like, okay, certain teams seem to be hit harder than others. Then there's conspiracies of, they just care about Japan and USA and just want them to make it and all this other stuff. And you do think about, you think about FIFA and they've literally been proven to be corrupt at certain times for certain things. So, you're hoping that that's not the case here. But yeah, it just sucks, for baseball in general because, you want to see Francisco Lindor, you want to see all these guys play. You want to see, Altuve and all them. You want to see every country at its strength, or at least the strength of the guys that want to play. And when that doesn't happen, and it's over insurance, and you're not really sure, there's a lot of different things out there where you're trying to figure out, and the common fan's not going to know, and you're just gonna see insurance and be like, oh well, that sucks, or you're gonna have an opinion. So yeah, I mean, it sucks that this is the conversation leading in the month before. I don't know. It seems like they're the boycott threat by Puerto Rico was legit. Finding alternatives, that's legit. It seems like they got at least one or two guys cleared from that way. But I think, and like I said earlier, I think MLB started this as just a friendly competition in March against all the countries, and it kind of grew into, oh, this is a legit tournament that maybe wants to become, not the World Cup, obviously that's huge, but the World Cup of baseball, where people really care about it. And that's the bad part, is that now you have to deal with this. And if it's just this is a blip in the radar, they fix it for the next one, and maybe one or two guys doesn't get insured, but everyone else does. We're not going to worry about it. But right now, it just sucks that like you said, shooting themselves in the foot, where everyone's ready for this tournament, and then now it's just like, well, one of the top teams is down half their major league roster, and they threaten to pull out of a tournament they're hosting for the first round. So yeah.
Yeah, it kind of seems like this is a prelude to what could possibly be taking place next winter. Obviously, with the CBA expiring, there's going to be some hash outs with contracts, revenue sharing, salary cap, all that. The other added element is whether guys are going to be able to participate in the Olympics. I think if Major League Baseball can find a way to make it work where they can play in the middle of the summer, in some capacity, in the Olympics with their star athletes, I think that's just a tremendous marketing opportunity for the sport in general. One of my favorite things about basketball is that when they have the Summer Olympics go on, and you got your NBA All-Star Hall of Fame type players playing together. I mean, USA is one of the most dominant countries in that sport. You always got the dream team, all that stuff. You got LeBron, Steph Curry this past year when they were this about a year or two ago, the last time that they played. So there's a lot of media attention, there's a lot of hype, and there's a lot of money to be made in that. So I think if they can hash out the insurance issues with the WBC here this time around and see how big it can be with the star players, and especially on the Team USA side, you can start to see bigger picture. Like, is the WBC ever going to be the World Cup? Probably not. And even the players have alluded to that as well, where they're said, I believe Bryce Harper was asked, he was before he was confirmed to play. He said, playing in the WBC is cool and all, but like the Olympics is just a different animal. So this is, in my opinion, just a prelude the way everything's unfolding here, especially with the amount of players that are very serious about this tournament, especially the Japanese players, the Team USA players, and obviously all the Latin American countries. They were kind of the first, them in Japan were kind of the first, teams to put like their best stars on the roster, and then Team USA kind of caught up in the back end. The other thing about this, there is a little bit of hypocrisy in terms of the insurance coverage. The one guy I look at right away on Team USA roster is Byron Buxton. There was no issues getting him, cleared and ready to play. And he's one of the most injury plagued players I've ever seen, especially watching his entire career in Minnesota. I don't know if they probably just have an agreement with saying, hey, if you're injured, we don't care. We'll pay you anyway. You're our star player in Minnesota. But it does seem a little odd that, Team USA, Team Japan haven't had any sort of hiccups at all. The only one that possibly could have been like news breaking for Team Japan is what I mentioned earlier, Ohtani, him potentially not getting covered as a pitcher, which makes sense because he missed all of, the second half almost of 2023 from Tommy John, all of 2024 from Tommy John. And even this past season, he was kind of built up from 1 inning to 2 innings to 3 innings and so on, like we all saw. So that would have been interesting to see, but he's not pitching in the tournament. But I am curious to see where the conversation goes, especially in the next couple of days, because I think we mentioned Team Puerto Rico. They're not pulling out at all. They're still going to play. Obviously, they got Edwin Díaz, but they're still hoping that some of these players that were denied initially, like Lindor, can play. So if that's the case, that'll make me excited for them. That way they can finally get their star players. But other than that, I don't really know what else to make of the insurance thing this time around. Just hoping that they get it cleaned up for possibly the Olympics and the next WBC that comes up here soon.
Yeah, Olympics would be cool, especially being in LA. You were probably going to be at Dodger. I don't know if they announced it. I think Dodger Stadium. So
it will be at Dodger Stadium because I remember that's why they when they interviewed Roberts for the California Post, he mentioned that it's kind of like he wants to be the manager because it's in our stomping grounds. So I mean, that's basically everything's aligning for a conversation to be had, which is going to be interesting.
And that's how you keep baseball as an Olympic sport. Like it's been in and out of the Olympics the last few times, and if you get MLB buy-in and have MLB talent, I'm pretty sure Olympic committee is going to keep it in there. So,
all right. So the next part, this one's the fun, just because if you're keeping track of the Dodgers transaction page, it's kind of been all over the place with this particular player, and that's Mike Siani. If you're keeping track from the beginning of the offseason, I believe in early December, the Dodgers claimed him off of waivers from the Atlanta Braves, who DFA'd him. Siani was on the roster for a couple weeks, ended up getting DFA'd as the roster moved for the official announcement of Kyle Tucker. He gets claimed by the Yankees. Yankees DFA him to make the signing of Cody Bellinger official. And here he comes back to Los Angeles. Dodgers put in a claim for him to have him return on the 40-man roster. The one thing that's interesting about this is that they ended up DFAing Andy Ibanez, who the Dodgers signed to a guaranteed major league contract for 1 year, $1.2 million. Believe there was also some added like escalators or performance-based, pay increases if he hit some certain, areas of his game. Right now, he is in DFA limbo. We'll see if he returns to the organization, and we'll touch on how that can still happen. But clearly, the Dodgers must have liked Siani for some reason, which is more than likely the defense. But when you're looking at the Dodgers transaction announcement yesterday, were you a little surprised? Did it catch you off guard?
Yeah, surprised just because, and we talked about this before with, at this time of the season, teams are claiming guys, DFAing guys, hoping that nobody else claims them and being able to keep them in the system. And, we talked about that. And this is probably, it feels like something like that, but the Dodgers just put $1 million down payment basically on Ibanez so that thinking nobody's going to claim them for that. seeing how deep he got into the offseason, that's very possible that teams aren't gonna even pony up $1 million for a guy that is maybe not gonna play for them. So this would what it feels like for the Dodgers. It's interesting, but it's another way. People call them loopholes, but I think it's just the Dodgers being smart. Smarter than most other teams. And if they really wanted Andy Ibanez to be in the organization, but they kind of wanted to have Mike Ciani in the organization too, and they wanted to have their cake and eat it, then this is the way they can try to do it: is paying one guy a major league salary, DFAing him, hopefully nobody picks him up, and then stashing him in the minors until they need him. And they could need him early in the season. They could not. They're still. Tommy Edmonds said he's shooting for the start of the season, but that's not necessarily a guarantee. We're going to talk about Kike. He's still not there yet. Like there's other things that are unclear on the Dodgers roster right now that are more on the margins, but still. And the Dodgers are we've seen the 38 to 40 man role on the Dodger roster is very fluid, and can probably be filled by 15, 20 plus guys every year. And maybe this is just that, but starting a little bit earlier.
Yeah, I think the added benefit of bringing Ciani back, he still has minor league options. He doesn't have to make the team out of camp right away. He'll remain on the 40-man roster, and then once camp opens, the 60-day IL also opens. So you're going to see a lot more spots cleared for that reason as well. So it'll be interesting to see the roster shuffling the Dodgers do when that comes around. But Ibanez, I remember when they initially announced the signing, it was a little odd just because he was non-tendered or DFA'd by the Tigers. And the main reason was that is because in terms of, roster flexibility, he had no minor league options. So basically he had to make the team or you had to release him. And the Dodgers don't typically like that, to be held back by that, which is why they've kind of looked down on the waiver market for some of these guys that do have that roster flexibility to be optioned or to be outrighted to the AAA roster altogether, like they did with Fitzgerald about 2 weeks ago. So there is a way for Ibanez to still remain with the organization. If he clears waivers, I believe they can ask him if he would accept an assignment to AAA. And it would be up to him to accept or decline that. If he declines it, he would just outright and become a free agent again. So signing for league minimum somewhere else. So that'll be interesting. I imagine there's probably some talks behind the scenes like, hey, look, accept it. You'll be on the minor leagues in terms of starting right now. We'll probably add you back to the 40-man roster right as spring training starts. Obviously the money's already guaranteed, so he'll be in contention for a job to make the roster again. That's probably best case scenario for the Dodgers. They're going to have a few spots open. Kike Hernandez is another guy that I mentioned earlier where it seems like they are going to re-sign him eventually, but there's no rush because he's not going to be ready until possibly the All-Star break at the kind of like earliest. It sounds like with his elbow surgery timetable. And then even Tommy Edman, I imagine when they say, yeah, I'm shooting for opening day, in my mind, that's just them saying, we're going to keep it out there just to, for us to talk about and write about. But I'm pretty sure the Dodgers are going to be like, look, why don't we take it back a month or two and then see and reevaluate, slow play you up. We'll probably see Hae-Sung Kim. We'll probably see Alex Freeland, Andy Ibanez if he ends up clearing, accepting that assignment, all that stuff. So I think the Dodgers are very, very, very smart in terms of what they're doing with the last bits of their roster. A lot of teams around baseball starting to catch on, especially when they're talking about it on social media, saying it's another thing that we've ended up, roster manipulation, breaking baseball here and there. This is just Andrew Freeman being smart with the roster spots that he's been given. I was shocked, though, to just see the constant shuffling of bringing Ciani back. It does make me question if another guy is potentially coming back as well, and that is Ben Rortvedt. We don't have to spend too much time about it, but he was DFA'd by the Cincinnati Reds. There is that familiarity with both sides between the organization. I am assuming if he's still unclaimed on waivers or if he's just released and a free agent, could the Dodgers reignite that, potential reunion, especially if Dalton Rushing's open to playing more first base and possibly left field. Team could realistically run three catchers to start the year. It wouldn't be the worst thing I've seen. But Any other thoughts on these moves at least, and possibly a reunion?
No, it's just always fun when you're at this point and we're talking about like the 39th and 40th spots on the roster when there's teams out there that I don't even think field a full major league team yet. So
Yeah,
it's a different world we live in, but it's a world I live to live in.
yeah, and then obviously rounding out here, don't have to discuss it too much. Kind of just will mention it if you're keeping score at home. Dodgers did make a couple few other minor moves, especially on the pitching side. They signed Ryder Ryan to a minor league deal with the invitation to spring training. Will get a guaranteed $800,000 if he makes the major league roster. Ryder is the brother of River Ryan, so there's a familiarity there having those two play together. I believe River Ryan spoke about that during his interview at FanFest, saying it's exciting to play with his brother against the first time they've done that since I believe he said high school. The other one is Cole Irvin. He comes back from overseas. I believe he was playing in the KBO. Another minor league pitching depth, signing for the Dodgers, who know how much value pitching is, especially you know, given the injuries that they've had. We've already had Blake Snell talk. We've already seen the workload Yamamoto has been put on from last year. So, as the saying goes, you can never have too much starting pitching or pitching in general. So, I will imagine we'll probably see one of those guys or both of those guys at some point this season. So, that'll be interesting. And then we already touched on a possible Kike Hernandez reunion down the line. So, kind of rounding out this episode today. We talked about it a couple weeks back, I believe earlier this winter. Clayton Kershaw being considered for a possible NBC sports analyst role, whether it's in the broadcast booth, pregame, something along those lines. We were kind of shocked that he was still being considered just because he's so close to him announcing his retirement and ending his professional career and how much he wanted to be that full-time family man. Well, it seems like a little short winter and spending it time with his, four plus kids at home. He ended up wanting to come back to the baseball world. I don't think it's been officially announced by NBC, Comcast, or anybody right now, but he is reportedly getting a deal done to join the NBC baseball crew. We don't know what type of role it's going to be. I imagine it's going to be probably someone that steps in the booth or maybe on the pregame, postgame show for the games. But what are your takeaways from this? Seeing Clayton Kershaw quicker than we all thought.
Yeah, no, it's cool. I mean, we talked about it that we got a lot of this type of stuff from Kershaw the last couple years when he was hurt or when he was on an off day, and talking with the Sportsnet booth or being in the booth talking to the guys. He's seemed to be one of the guys that became the dugout interview guy for the Dodgers when they were on national TV too. So it's fun, it's cool. I would imagine if it's if he's part of like a pre and post game show, it's literally one day a week. They usually fly in the morning of and fly out the night of. So it won't take maybe too much of his time. Not sure where the NBC studio's at, if it is a studio thing. If he is end up being, I can't see him in the booth. So I gotta imagine it's for like the pre post game shows. I know Joey Votto's another name that was reported that he signed. So like those are two guys that know the game of baseball, but have personalities to go along with it, which isn't always the case with baseball players. And it'll be fun to watch. And, you know, it's hard to keep track for a lot of people where baseball is and everywhere it's at. But, there are some good booths out there now, or I mean, there are some good talent out there now with Fox and, Poppy and Jeter and A-Rod. And then you got, TBS with Grandy and J-Roll and Pedro. Now, you're going to have NBC with Kershaw and Votto and whoever else. I mean, it's a lot of, you see it in other sports, and it's cool to see it in baseball.
Yeah, I actually am excited for NBC getting a crack at it. If anyone watches football regularly, you kind of know how they do their broadcast. I believe they're hosting the Super Bowl this year. It's miles better than what ESPN's been doing in the past, whether it's covering the game or just, kind of with the camera angles, the commentator roles, and who they brought in. ESPN's had the reins for a long time right now, pretty much my entire childhood, especially with Sunday Night Baseball, and then obviously the wild card games for the past couple of years as well. it is good to get a fresh look. And I think NBC is definitely doing the right things. The only one I don't really agree with is bringing Bob Costas back for a year, which it's sometimes it's time to just let it go, man, especially after I may just have some bad, painful memories of him calling the 2023 NLDS, especially when the Dodgers were getting their ass whooped that series. So, but having Clayton Kershaw join the ranks, it's an interesting choice. He is a really good interviewer, especially when all those times he was on the injured list and was able to speak and talk to, Joe Davis or Hershiser or even the national broadcast, whether it was on Fox or whatever. So I think he'll definitely be a good addition to the crew. It is interesting. I believe NBC's first game of this new deal is at Dodger Stadium. They'll do the home opener, which is going to be the banner ceremony. And then believe it hasn't been officially announced, but it's been rumored. I've checked Reddit, people that are familiar with the team as well. I think ring night is game two. That's what they did last year. I
Oh,
think they're
yeah.
going to do the same thing this year as well. So Kershaw was already going to be in Los Angeles more than likely for both of those games. One, to check the banner out, and then two, to get his World Series ring, and then he can head back home to Texas. Like you said, it's one night a week. You go in, you do it, and then you leave and you head back home. So I think it's perfectly in line with the family life he's looking to have right now, especially he'll be wrapping up the World Baseball Classic. We kind of forget that he's still participating in that as well. So baseball just never ends for Clayton Kershaw and the Kershaw family.
And like you said, as Dodger fans, we got him for a long time, and now we'll get him a little bit more every so often.
Yeah, but I mean, honestly, there was a lot of news that came out, especially the last 2 weeks, with FanFest. Obviously, the season getting so close after the Super Bowl. We got a couple more days. Pitchers and catchers are going to report. We're going to see all the players start posting. The social media is going to go crazy with all of the guys, returning to camp, and about time to start trying to run it back again. I know you and I have been in lockstep in terms of saying, it's a lot easier to view the off season or the upcoming season where you're the World Series champ from the season prior. So it's kind of the high I'm still trying to live out right now. And hopefully, this season ends the way we all expect it to. But other than that,
Yeah,
any other
I rewatched the ninth and 10th inning and 11th inning again earlier today, actually. So
So that's what helps. You can start rewatching these things without pain. I used to watch some postseason highlights and be like, well, I'm not going to watch the next round because it was pain. But now I can watch them all the way through, the good and the bad, because I know the outcome. But yeah, a couple more days. We're going to be talking spring training baseball. We'll have some more to discuss there. Hopefully, we get some more possibly finalized roster moves, especially when the 60-day IL opens up next week. But we will be here on the Bleed Los podcast YouTube channel. Obviously, like I mentioned earlier, if anyone is interested in any of the videos from FanFest, we also have that up. We got the latest episode of the Bleed Los podcast with Anthony and Drea up that posted this morning, I believe. So be sure to check that out as well. And then DodgersBeat.com. That's where we got all the news, updates, opinions, and more. And you can help support our work. But Vince, any closing comments before we get out of here tonight?
no closing comments. Go Dodgers as always.
Alrighty, we will see you next time. Be sure to subscribe. Have a good one, guys.